Let's read the passage. Today's passage is from Job, chapter 38, verses 1 through 15. Today's passage is Job chapter 38, verses 1 through 15. I'm going to use New International Version. Then the Lord spoke to Job out of the storm. He said, "Who is this that obscures my plans with words without knowledge? Brace yourself like a man. I'll question you, and you shall answer me. Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation? Tell me if you understand. Who marked off its dimensions? Surely you know. Who stretched the measuring line across it? On what were its footings set? Or who laid its cornerstone? While the morning stars sang together and all the angels shouted for joy, who shut up the sea behind doors when it burst forth from the womb? When I made the clouds its garment and wrapped it in thick darkness. When I fixed limits for it and set its door and bars in place. When I said, this far you may come and no farther. Here is where your proud waves halt. Have you ever given orders to the morning or shown the dawn its place, that it might take the earth by the edges and shake the wicked out of it? The earth takes shape like clay under a seal. Its features stand out like those of a garment. The wicked are denied their light, and their upraised arm is broken." Amen. Is there any soccer fan here? Football, I call football, soccer, football fan. There's a player called Lionel Messi. If you have not, maybe even though you don't like soccer, or football is the right word here. Even though you don't like football, you may have heard his name because he's the athlete who makes the most money amongst every athlete in the world. And MSN here is a trio from long time ago. Not even a few years ago. Messi, Suarez, and Neymar, they are all from Argentina, Uruguay, and Brazil. And the title was inspired by the trio I like the most in the history of football. So you might know why. You might ask, like, what is MSN? Please stay with me because I'll explain what MSN stands for. It is not Messi, Suarez, Neymar. I'm not saying they are the key in our solutions. But anyway, if an angel from heaven comes to you today before you go to bed or while you're sleeping and tell you, you only have 24 hours to live, how would you spend the remaining 24 hours of your life? If you were only given 12 hours, would that change how you spend time with other people or for yourself compared to the 24 hours? What about 48 hours? What about a year, 2 years, or 3 months? Even though I don't have this experience, I have an experience when I was in early 20s that I felt like my life was falling apart. Some of you may know all Korean males have to join the army. And I was applying to be a driver because I got rejected to join certain places for 5 times in a row, but driver was the only spot I could get in because I had to finish the army. Otherwise, my passport will be expiring every year. So I went to and applied for it, and then I got a call one day. I still remember this really vividly because I joined the army on February 4th. Then I got this call 2 weeks ago. I got a call from a random office, and then it was a number I did not know, and then they say, "Hey, is this Yein? Yeah. Is this your DOB? Right? Is this your social number? Yeah. Who are you?" And she said, it was her. She said, "I'm from a military manpower administration office." And then I said, "Yeah, so I'm calling you to give you the date you have to join the army." So when is it? She said, 2 weeks later. So if you don't know what it feels like, basically, of course, like people, older generation, they served a lot longer. As soon as you join the army, you are giving up on everything. I was paid $150 per month. You may think that's a good pay, but $150 per month was it. And then you cannot use your cell phone. You cannot really talk to people around you. And by the time beating up doing physical harm on you was accepted in the army. So it was pretty stressful. And then I got so angry, so I started yelling at the wall and saying, why is my life falling apart like this? And then my dad comes in. He said, well, it's better for you to have 2 weeks date than you have 6 months. Because you think it might be better for you to have more time, but think about it. Today you think, I have 6 months. A month later you have, I only got 5 months. Later you think, I got only 4 months. So every day you will be stressed out. But he said, you only need to get stressed out for 14 days. And this is what I told him. I hate you. Get out of my room. Well, from this, I learned a very important lesson. When something painful is coming up, I have learned it's just better to experience it sooner than later. Because if I experience it sooner, then I can just finish it earlier. That's how I approach the workout. That's how I approach how I approach all my studies. And that's how I approach almost every difficult things in my life. Because I think if I can finish up early, I can enjoy my time later. But I did not know if I finish this, there's another thing coming up, and another thing coming up, and another thing coming up. Life is a never-ending hardships. But anyway, going back to the passage, I want to think about why is it so hard to go through hardships in our lives. It was an honor for me to be able to serve my country. However, it was not what I wanted to do, to spend 21 months there. However, even though it was painful, even though it was stressful, I was able to endure it because I knew when it's going to end. I knew once I joined the army, 21 months later, I'll be able to walk away and say, I'm done with here. But in most of our lives, the hardships and conflicts, we do not know when it is going to end. At the same time, we always ask questions in our lives. The very fundamental questions in our lives we ask ourselves, or that we try to find the answer is this: what is a good life like? How can we live happily? And how can we live a good life? And how can we live a happy life? And how can we help the next generation, our children and our families, to live a good life and a happy life? We want to find the answers for this, but whenever we go through hardships, struggles, or difficult moments in our lives, we are not able to find the answers to these questions anymore. Why is hardship so difficult? Because hardships stop us from finding the answers to the very fundamental questions we keep asking. And on top of it, hardships are difficult because we do not know when it's going to end. Today, we see a man who was going through the worst hardships in his life. This is from the passage from a few weeks ago, but let me read the first 2 verses again because this explains this guy, Job. His sons used to hold feasts in their homes on their birthdays, and they would invite their 3 sisters to eat and drink with them. When a period of feasting had run its course, Job would make arrangements for them to be purified. Early in the morning, he would sacrifice a burnt offering for each of them, thinking, perhaps my children have sinned and cursed God in their hearts. This was Job's regular custom. So Job was also asking the same questions. How can I live a good life? How can I live a happy life? How can I inherit better and happier lives to my children? And then the answer he found was this: if I stay with God, if I walk with God, if I live a good life in the eyes of God, I will be able to find the answers. So he decided to devote his life to God, and then that's how he lived. And then with his clean and honest life, people around him respected him. And also God blessed him with great wealth and popularity, and he was known to people around him. And people must have thought, if God exists, he must bless this type of person who is living an honest and devoted life. Otherwise, there is no person who can be blessed. However, we know what happened to him. One day, he lost everything. He lost every wealth he had. Every single child got killed in one place. And then his wife left him, abandoned him. And then at the end, he lost his health. Why? Because Satan and God played a game. Satan said, God, if you take everything away from him, Job is not going to live his life like that anymore. There's nothing wrong that Job did. It was only God and Satan who played the game, and Job was just a big victim of the game between God and Satan. And as I said, this is a literature. We are not sure if Job was a real person or not, but here that does not really matter. From this story, from the story that Job, who once devoted his life and going through all the worst suffering in his life, what can we learn from it? When we are in pain, when we are going through some conflicts or struggles or painful moments in our life, we have the same question, and then we feel the same thing that Job felt. It feels like there's nothing wrong with it, and it feels like God and Satan are playing a game. That's why I'm going through a suffering. We try to find the reason, but oftentimes in our hardships, it is even hard to find a reason for that, because oftentimes there's no reason for that. So from the story of Job, to us who've been asking the fundamental question that I listed here, and then to us who are often going through suffering and feeling lost, and who are trying to find the reason for suffering, but who cannot find the reason for that, from this story of Job, I want us to be able to learn two lessons. The first lesson I want us to learn is this. When we are going through suffering, it's the first thing. We must be able to mute all the noises around us. So 2 weeks ago, I shared we have to be able to mute all the noises because God is often speaking to us with a gentle voice. If you want to hear the gentle voice, we have to mute all the things around us. So I wanna dig a little deeper into that. What do you mean by noises? The first noise that we want to avoid when we are going through the suffering is what the people around us say to us. So when Job was going through a suffering, what happened to him? So he lost his wife, left him. His wife even cursed and left him. And then he lost his health. His life was deteriorating. And then Job's 3 friends then came to him and started rebuking him. Job, you're going through all this unreasonable suffering because of one reason. You must have must have sinned against God. We don't know what it is, but you better know that you have to repent. And Job did not really do anything wrong, so he tried to defend himself. But every time Job is trying to defend himself, people criticize him more and more and more harshly. So when we are going through sufferings, people often come to us and say, hey, that is not a right way. Why don't you try this way? Hey, why don't you try that way? Based on my experiences, why don't you try this way? They are thinking they are giving us advices, but let's be honest. Oftentimes, when people are trying to comment us, when they try to give us feedbacks, advices, that hurt us even more because people are not really saying that for us, but people are really actually saying that for themselves. Oftentimes, people try to give advices so that they can feel better about themselves. And it is us who are often get hurt from it. On the other hand, we might be that person. When we see people around us, we don't really pray for them, or we don't really think about them, but we just step in and we try to share our devices with them. And what does that end up happening? We hurt them even more. If we try to find the solutions from the devices of people, oftentimes we get hurt. And this is what happened to Job. After hearing all the advices from his friends, this is what he says. I cry out to you, God, but you do not answer. I stand up, but you merely look at him. You turn on me ruthlessly. With the might of your hand, you attack me. You snatch me up and drive me before the wind. You toss me about in the storm. Job might want to find an answer from his friends, however, he could not. More he was focusing on what the advices that were given from his friends, he was feeling more pathetic about himself because no one was able to give him the answer he was looking for. And also, what they were really saying was actually, they were saying it so that they could feel better about themselves. So when we are going through a hard time, let's try to be careful to accept or not to take advices from other people at the same time. If you are seeing other people around you who are going through a tough time, just don't give an advice right away. Take a step back, take a few deep breaths, pray about it, think about it twice or 3 times more. Then if God really wants you to tell that person, then do it out of love, then not out of your ego. And then second thing we want to mute is our tendency that we want to rely on our experiences and knowledge. I'm not telling you that God is going to give you some supernatural phenomena to help you to overcome your situations. We have to rely on our experiences, and then we have to rely on our knowledge. But here's the thing. But the important thing we have to remember is that my experience and my knowledge are not the same as other people's experiences and other people's knowledge. Why do we experience conflict in the workplace? Why do we experience conflict in the church? Why do we experience conflict even within the family? Because we do not accept this difference. As we are going through harder times, we begin to get obsessed with what we know, what we have experienced, that we are trying to make everyone move according to our experiences and knowledge. That we want everyone to fit into our thoughts and our experiences. Because we cannot accept this difference that my knowledge and experiences may be different than other people. Because we cannot accept the difference when a community is going through a hard time, it is getting worse. So what we really need to do is to resist our tendency. In this situation, we have to do this. But instead of doing that, again, lay it down, take a few deep breaths, pray about it, and take your time. The second thing I want us to learn from today's passage when we are going through the hard time is this. We must be able to stay still and stay silent. When we are in trouble, we ourselves make noise. We make noises. And because we are tired and weary as the suffering gets longer and lasts longer, we often say things that hurt other people easily. The reason why our suffering goes deeper, the reason why when there's a problem in the community, the conflict gets deeper and the conflict gets more serious is from people's words. Because I got hurt, I can hurt you. Because you hurt me, I'll hurt you even more. That was Job's attitude. But you know what? When God finally appeared to Job, this is how God responded to Job's complaint. Then the Lord spoke to Job out of the storm. He said, "Who is this that obscures my plans with words without knowledge? Brace yourself like a man. I'll question you, and you shall answer me." Job has been complaining. Job has been attacking his friends back so that he could protect himself. And then all of a sudden, God appears to him and says, "Do you even know about the mystery of creation? Why are you complaining to me?" God silenced the complaining Job and his friends who were trying to teach him because God really wanted to speak something to them. Complaints only bring more complaints. Your words that are bitter, or your words that were intended to attack other people, will just end up causing broken relationships. And it's not only about the word. We also need to stay silent, and that we also need to make our ego and pride stay silent as well. Because hardships and sufferings often make us to feel like feelings of failures. So we want to hide it. So we want to fight back to people around us. And oftentimes, when you are hurt, the only words you say is hurting other people. So when we are going through the suffering, as God said here, let's reduce and let's complain a little bit less. And don't say those words when you feel, don't say the harmful words or bitter words to people, especially people who are around you. Just stay silent sometimes. And then the last thing I want us to learn from Job is this: never stop praying. Romans chapter 1 verses 18 through 20 say this: "The wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all the godliness and wickedness of people who suppress the truth by their wickedness. Since what may be known about God is plain to them, because God has made it plain to them. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, His eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse." There's a question that I'm often being asked from youth students and elementary students or other people from college too, is what happened to the people who have not heard the gospel before? What happened to the people who died without hearing the gospel? What happened to the people who have not really listened to the messages from the missionaries? What happened to people who were born and died before Jesus came? And then the same question was being asked during Paul's time. And then this is how Paul answers to the question. We don't know how, we don't know specifically what, but even before the creation, God revealed Himself through the nature. Even though they do not hear the words of God from the mouth of human beings, God has already revealed fully and enough through the nature so that every human being, every creature know who God is. But we cannot listen to it because, as I said earlier, there are so much noises around us and so much going on inside of us. This is it sounds very unfair. And it sounds like to me, it's very scary too. But if you flip it this way, this means even before creation, God has been speaking to us through all creation. Do you know what that means? Even though it feels like there's no one around us who is supporting me, even when we are feeling God is staying silent to our sufferings, even when He sings, God is not even listening to our prayers, God is still speaking to us through every single creature around us. The reason why we cannot sense this, the reason why we cannot hear this message is this. It's just like a radio frequency. Because our frequency is not set to God's. So here I want to emphasize on praying. Praying is breathing. Proper breathing improves our lung capacity. If you want to run long and faster, you have to do tempo run training. You have to do a lot of interval training so that your lung capacity can better. In other words, you can breathe better. We have to train our breathing to breathe better. If you are lying on the sofa, couch, and then if you're asking yourself, why can't I run? Then we know why. Same thing for the prayer. If prayer is breathing, we have to train ourselves so that we can breathe out better and we can breathe in God more. That's why we should not stop praying. Even though it feels like our suffering and hardships or struggles last longer than we expected, even when you are feeling you are lonely and alone, even God is not listening to your prayer, even when it feels like God is not speaking to you anymore, as the Romans says, and as God said through the book of Job, God is still speaking to us, but it is us who is not listening to Him because we are not trained. Prayer must be trained. God speaks to us unceasingly, so we have to retune ourselves to God. So just lay down before God. Just kneel down before God just 5 minutes a day. Or stay here a little longer to pray to Him. It's a training. We need that so that we can tune our soul to God so that we can listen to Him. So as we wrap up the sermon, let's think about this question. What is the first thing you do when you are in a difficult situation or when you encounter a difficulty in your life? Is there more love in your words, in our words? Is there more swords and thorns in your words? What does prayer mean to you? And how do you want to train? How you want to discipline your prayer before God? As remember the sermon, let's try to sing this song. The chorus of this song says this: let your glory fall in this room, let it go forth from here to the nations. Let your fragrance rest in this place as we gather to seek your face. Oftentimes, soldiers ask their leaders, why do we need to get trained? Everything is so peaceful. The soldiers and the people who are serving, they are trained for the battles when it is peaceful. Why do we need to train to pray longer and to pray better? Why do we need to invite God when nothing is going on in our lives? Because at some point in our lives, we will need God more than any time. Then we are inviting God in us so that when we need Him the most, He can lead us and then we can obey Him. So let's invite Him to our lives. Let's invite Him to every area of our life. And as we sing this song, let's sing "Let Your Glory Fall."